to Mocha with Mom. Hi, I'm Jackie Walker, and this is my mother,
Linda Nayas.
and we are here for our very first session of Mocha with Mom. So, what does that mean? We're just going to have conversations about whatever. So, today's topic that we're going to cover is growing up in our teens. Like, what was that like? We are from two different generations, obviously. I want to know, like, during your time, well, first of all, tell everybody what decade you experienced your teens in.
So I was a teen in the 60s. Baby boomer.
What was life like then? Like, what was going on? What was the, like, I like to, one of the things that me and my students talk about when we talk about marketing and entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff is like, what was the social environment like, the economic environment?
Well, in the 60s, it was the middle of segregation. So we lived in totally segregated communities. I attended an all-black school from elementary all the way up through high school, and when we had sports activities like in high school and etc., we always were bused to the nearest high school, that was in our conference, which usually was out of town. So that was basically the culture, the climate at that time.
So what city did you grow up in?
Waco, Texas.
Okay, and so you said you had to be bused to like play against people that were not in your town. So what's the closest town that you had to be bused to?
We would go to like Hillsboro. I think we even went as far as Waxahachie on occasion.
Okay.
But it was
so that's like a 90-mile drive from
right.
Waco to Waxahachie.
So there was Temple, Killeen, it was schools in that area.
Okay.
Because Waco, we only had two black high schools at that time. And we played the one school that was in our city, but other schools were, we had to,
And so which school were you at?
I was at Carver High School, George Washington Carver High School.
All right.
As a matter of fact, my class was the next to the last class at that school. It was after the second year after I graduated when desegregation went into place. And so those two black high schools were closed, and so 2 years later there was a integrated high school integrated for the city.
So Gwen was a part of the last class?
She was the last.
My mother's younger sister was a part of the last class. Okay. And the other high school, black high school, was?
Moore High School.
Okay. That's where my daddy went to school.
A.J. Moore High School.
Okay. So for me, I'm an 80s child. I graduated in 86. So my high school years were from 82 to 86. And y'all know that was the hip hop era.
Yeah.
Okay? And it was the Madonna era, and it was the Michael Jackson era. So we had all of that culture going on. It was the Boy George era. So I think that during the time when I was going through high school, we were becoming a more diverse environment, because like I said, Michael Jackson was really hot during that time, and he was in his Billie Jean and his Beat It and his phase of life, and Madonna was wearing lace and gloves and all this stuff. Boy George came out wearing makeup and everything, so it was like people were beginning to venture away from what the quote-unquote norm was. So for me, I just remember just a lot of fun. It was just like a lot of upbeat, tempo things. Like I said, we had hip-hop coming out, LL Cool J. Why is his name leaving my mind, right? Sugar Hill Gang, Dougie Fresh. That's what I'm trying to think about, Dougie Fresh. So we had all of this culture that was happening at the time, and it wasn't necessarily black culture, it wasn't necessarily white culture, it was like integration. of cultures.
Yeah, it was a new beginning.
Yeah, it was a new beginning. The high school I went to was predominantly white. It was about 50 to 55% white. And then a small percentage of Asian and other, and then of course the other majority of the second majority group was black. So we had a really good mix at my school in Oak Cliff, Texas. Okay, Oak Cliff, Texas was a really good mix of students. Political. It wasn't until I got to college that I really paid attention to the political scene, because I'm just not a political person. But Jesse Jackson was the person. I remember when I was in high school making sure that I got registered to vote so I could vote for Jesse Jackson, for president. What were some highlights from your teen years?
Well, Motown was hot.
Ooh,
yes.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, Motown was popping out new artists every week. So James Brown and Marvin Gaye and all of those, the popular people.
So for me, highlights from my teens. For me, the highlight was participating in sports, high school activities. I was in a couple of clubs. Oh, the biggest highlight was we had this group called the Top 10. I participated in ironically, Future Teachers of America. I had no plans of being a teacher. But ironically, I am a teacher. When I look back at those pictures, and I'm like, I was in Future Teachers of America. And I was in that because somebody said it was fun, that they went on field trips. And we did. We went on a field trip to Texas A&M Commerce. We went to Austin. So we did go on field trips. But that's the only reason why I joined. So now I can tell you one of my highlights, and my mama, is probably not a highlight to her, but it's a highlight for me. Me and my friends in my senior year, my mom used to travel all the time with her job. And she had a Berlinetta Camaro. What we're gonna talk about is like what we did in high school. I know I covered some of the things that I did in our highlights of my teen years, but what you do in high school?
Okay, so one of the highlights about high school, we didn't have social media like today, but we did have a means of communication. It was called a jive group.
So something that I did when I was in high school, like I said before, I participated in a couple of clubs. I did Future Teachers of America. I also did Future Business Leaders of America. And I wanted to be a cheerleader, but they wouldn't let me. One of the things for high school that did stick out to me is that my mother graduated from college.
Yes.
My sophomore year of high school.
It was my goal because I was a single parent and I was 18 when she was born, and so I was going to college part-time all her life. So because I didn't have a degree didn't mean that I wasn't able to progress. I was able to, get substantial paying jobs even without having a college degree. I was going for a BA in accounting, and I learned that as long as you had 20 hours of accounting, you could get just about any job anywhere. And so that's what, reason why we kept moving around. Every time I got a pay raise, we moved to somewhere better.
And she moved me to Dallas where I thought I was going to die. So now we're going to talk about crushes. Because we know as teenage girls, we always have a crush on somebody.
Right.
So who was yours?
Well, I had a crush on the quarterback of our football team. Interestingly enough, he lived right across the street from me.
Okay.
We never talked to each other. But he was a quarterback, and boy, there were hearts in my eyes for him.
That he never knew of. So what about any celebrity crushes? A high profile people or whatever?
I didn't really have any crushes on people along that line at that time. The only thing I was thinking about as a teenager was getting to 18 and
Smokey Robinson money out during that time?
But he wasn't. He was more of my mom's crush.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
He was.
Yeah, he wasn't. He wasn't. Sad thing, no, we didn't have teenager or young people who were popular at that time. Everybody was an adult, and so everybody that we liked, our parents liked, and so they really, it was really kind of tapped.
Well, let me tell you, I had all kind of crushes. Let me see. I had a crush. Now this crush actually was before my high school years, but Stoney Jackson. If y'all grew up in the 80s, then y'all know who Stoney Jackson is. He used to play in movies. He used to play in that TV show called White Shadow. Wasn't that the name of that show where it was a white basketball coach with the coaching this high school basketball team? It was called White Shadow. I think it was called White Shadow. He was one of the basketball players. He had his little Jerry curl, hung in a little shag. And surprisingly enough, I had a crush on Michael Jackson because Michael Jackson was normal back. All right, so who were celebrities or high-profile people back during your time? And I know, like, during your time, I'm saying your time like it was just so ancient, but like the Panthers were out at that time, weren't they?
Yeah, the Black Panthers. And interestingly enough, the Black Panthers were not looked on as militant.
They were more social conscious.
They were more social conscious, and so to be, in any situation that was involved with the Black Panthers was considered to be a positive.
Right.
And let's see. But as far as, well, see, in the 60s, it was when all of the civil rights things were happening. So all of the people that were popular were, as
Angela Davis.
Angela Davis. Oh yeah, she was popular.
There were some celebrities back there time, like movie stars or music-wise, that were big for you.
Well, it was Smokey Robinson, everybody in Motown. It was everything Motown.
It was a Motown movement during that time.
Motown, everything. Ross, all of that.
Well, for me, in the 80s, the celebs, of course, the Jacksons, and like I mentioned before, Madonna and Boy George, and all these people started coming out. As far as movies were concerned, didn't Spike Lee?
Yes.
Spike Lee. Spike Lee became the person that set the movie tone with
Issues.
I mean, but the first one that came out, Do the Right Thing. All right, so let's just switch gears here. We're going to talk about like what our aspirations were from high school, the time we were in high school. What at that time did you aspire to do with your life, career-wise, personally, whatever?
Well, my aspiration, first of all, was to go to college. I was the first one in our family to graduate from high school. And no one ever thought about anything as far as education-wise beyond high school.
So for me, and that was a great accomplishment because it was something for me to look at, because my mother accomplished it. She always said that, I mean, I didn't have any other idea of what to do after high school but to go to college. Because that was the expectation that was set. Okay, parents, we got to listen. You got to set the expectations. All right. So for me, when I was in high school, I aspired to be a model, but of course, college was always on the horizon. So I followed in my mother's footsteps, and in high school, I took 2 years of accounting because I was going to become an accountant. And then by the time my senior year rolled around, I decided that accounting was not what I wanted to do, that I actually wanted to enter into the field of fashion. All right, so we all know that, life happens in our families and stuff like that. So although, we're living our teen lives and all that kind of stuff, things go on. So we're gonna talk about some significant things that happened to our families or in our families that may have impacted us negatively or positively, or just changed the direction, or just, it happened. So what happened during the time when you were a teen?
My younger sister got pregnant when I was a senior. And my younger sister was much more outgoing than I was. She was what you call big bone. I was skinny mini. So she was in the drill team, and she participated in a lot of different things. And she got pregnant. Well, during that time, it was different. So if you were pregnant, you were kicked out of everything. My mom had paid for her to be in the drill team. So she made me get in the drill team.
Oh, wow. See, you didn't say you participated in that. So for me, during my teen years, now interestingly enough, my mother's sister, who had her child while she was in high school, the child she had, which was my cousin, we grew up like sisters, had a child while I was in high school. And she's a year and 3 months older than me. So I was in my senior year of high school. So just like with you were in your senior year of high school and Gwen had Pam. When I was in my senior year of high school, Pam had Candace. So that was significant. Also, our family had a situation that occurred with my mom's youngest brother. Something with the law that got him all entangled. You know, we're gonna use that word entangled. It's a different kind of entanglement than Jade. We just had a lot of babies that were being born during the time when I was in high school. Our family, like, my grandmother had 4 kids, and then all of a sudden, grandbabies started popping up everywhere. You know, me and my cousins were the older crew of grandkids. And then to make it plain and clear, my mom and her sister are a year apart. My mom's brothers are 9 and 10 years younger than my mom. So her brothers are 9 and 10 years older than me. So by the time I hit my high school years, they started having kids. And so our family grew. So let's talk about our spiritual life as teens. So what was happening with you spiritually?
Well, I can remember before becoming a teen, when my sister and I, who was a year younger than me, we were, say, like in 1st and 2nd grade, my mom used to drop us off at church and pick us up. She would drop us off at church and pick us up, and she did that for until I became 12. And then at the end of at the age of 12, she asked me, did I want to go to church anymore? And I said no. I had a friend who went to church on Sundays, and she would invite me to Christmas, Easter, Mother's Day, and those type of things, and I would attend. But outside of that, we had absolutely no spiritual life.
So for me, pretty similar. We didn't grow up in church. I remember when I don't even know how old I was, when we were living in Fort Worth. My mom and I went to this church one time, and I remember getting baptized. It didn't mean nothing to me. I didn't even know what. I know that they put us in the water and took us out. I'm like, I didn't want to do it. But in high school, I'll tell you, my only exposure really to anything spiritual, my best friend, her family is very religious. They went to church like every day. I mean, like, because they sang in the choir, and it was a little small church, they went to church like every day. They were going to choir practice, they were going to this practice, they were going to that practice, and then they went to church on Sundays. So I would go to church with my friend on Sundays, and I remember they couldn't wear, all they could wear was skirts for a long time. And so I went and it was a Church of God in Christ. And so when I went to church with her, it wasn't because I was trying to be spiritual. It's because I was doing something with my friend. And I'm an only child, so to hang out with my friend and her 2 sisters, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to church with Janita. And so I went to church with her, but I didn't understand it, because like I said, she's in a Kojic church. So there was a lot of screaming, shouting, dancing, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking at these people like, what's wrong with them? I'm like, why are they doing all that? I'm not feeling it. Must be something wrong with them. So, I didn't understand all of that. So my exposure was just very limited. And I remember that, like, on campus at school, we had a fellowship of Christian athletes. And I'm like, why would the athletes want to participate in something that's church related? I really didn't get it at all. I was like, why are the athletes doing this church group? I was clueless. And to me, it was just confusing because these people go to church, but they still acting like everybody else. I mean, my behavior was better than a lot of people who went to church. So I just didn't understand what church was doing for anybody. So I was clueless. Well, what is something now that you see that reminds you of back when you graduated from high school?
Well, I grew up in the 60s, and so there was the middle of segregation. I really, didn't know anything about segregation growing up until I turned 18 and moved out. And that's when I began to experience the black-white thing. What I'm seeing now Since I turned 18, I've experienced a lot of different progresses, good things that have happened in my life since then. But what I am seeing now in 2020, that reminds me a lot of what was happening around when I turned 18 is it looks like we're moving back in time. So
I guess I can say that something that reminds me of back then is how everything is still has even become more diversified. All right, so just going off of that last question, what is the biggest change that you see from what was it, 1966 to in 2000? If you had to compare those two years, what is the biggest difference you see?
Social media.
Oh, yeah.
Social media. So fast forward on to 2020, even 2019. Now they come to me to find out what's going on because I do have a smartphone and I am on both Instagram and on Facebook. And not only that, TMZ.
Oh, Lord, no. Now, the biggest thing that pushed her to get a smartphone is because we all had iPhones. Okay, so I didn't have an iPhone until 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I don't know. Let's see, Mookie's been out of school. I would say 4 years ago. So anyway, we got smartphones. We got iPhones, and so when you communicate in a group text, you can keep your communication going back and forth. But if it's somebody who has an Android,
I was doing good now with smartphones.
When that communication keeps going back and forth, the Android kind of gets left out of the conversation. I was like, Mom, if you get an iPhone, you can stay in the loop. So last year, she became team iPhone. For me, I would have to say in the 80s is when the computer came out. I remember taking a computer class and sitting at the table with this big old gigantic computer, sitting on this table and this big old gigantic plotter. I don't even know what that thing was, but it was like,
The dot matrix.
Oh, yes. And I just remember that's when we were learning how to use computers. I had a typing class at one point in high school, and I had a computer class. And typing class meant we were on a typewriter. Seeing how fast we could type. But I took a computer class. So I think for me, the biggest difference between then and now is technology. I know cell phones. We didn't have these back then. my students, I told my students that we didn't have cell phones back then. And they were like, how did you look up stuff? I said, we went to the library. Well, you guys, this has been a joy to go back down memory lane and talking about our teen years. And you can see the difference there's 18 years difference between us. And so just to see the difference of the time in which we grew up in, it's just interesting to talk about that. But I'm pretty sure that y'all found something that y'all could connect to. And so we hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and maybe it'll spur a little conversation between you and your mom or dad or granny, grandpa, or whoever it is in your family that you have a generation difference in, or maybe you and your kids. So anyway, we will talk to you all again on another edition of Mocha with Mom. Bye.